Hello again, YouTubers. Welcome back to the Board Game Captain. I'm your host, the Board Game Captain, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about the upcoming gaming convention, Gen Con. Here I'm holding some programs from previous Gen Cons. Now, Gen Con, if you're not familiar, is Gamer Christmas in August. It is the oldest. This year is 50 years it's been in existence, and it is the most well attended, which means the largest number of people show up to it, of any game convention on the planet. It's the oldest and best attended game convention in the world. It's coming up in August, and today is January 28th, 2017, which means tomorrow, January 29th, 2017, is the day that Gen Con badges go on sale, which is why we decided to do a video about Gen Con. Lynn and I talked about it, and we decided it would be cool to do a top 10 pieces of advice for preparing for Gen Con. And if you guys like this, we'll do a top 10 pieces of top 10 list for advice for attending Gen Con when the event tickets go on sale. So, without further ado, let's get to it. Number 10. The number 10 bit of advice we have here on our list is to write a checklist, which is kind of ironic because it's on our list here that we already wrote. But this is kind of an important thing because if you're like me, you never write lists. And if you're like me, you always forget something. So this is something that Lynn always does, and she's got me to come around to seeing the importance of writing a checklist of everything you're going to need to bring. So ahead of time, way out in advance, we write a checklist of all the things we're going to need to pack, all the things we're going to need to bring, all the things we're going to need to remember to do last minute before we leave the house. And you know what? It is really important. It is really valuable. And even if you don't like writing lists, take a little time to start one a few weeks out from Gen Con and add to it periodically when you remember something, when you say, oh, I'm going to need to remember that. Make sure to write it on the list. So that is the number 10, write a checklist. Number 9. The number 9 piece of advice we have on our top 10 pieces of advice list is to pack everyday necessities. Now this may seem like common sense, but you'd be surprised how often people go on a trip and forget things that they need every day or things they're going to need while they're on the trip. I mean, when I say everyday necessity, I mean clothing, I mean electronics. You're going to want to go on the internet, so don't forget to bring a laptop or an iPad or something like that. Chargers for your phone and electronics, prescriptions. If you often need any kind of prescription or occasionally need a prescription, for instance, if you have a prescription inhaler or an EpiPen or something like that, don't forget it. Make sure to put that on your checklist and make sure to pack that. If you usually have to take dietary supplements or regularly need antacids, don't forget these things. So often I see people get to a convention or a vacation even, and they've forgotten these things and they're running out to the local store. Save yourself some time and save yourself a little bit of headache. Make sure to write it down on the checklist, which was number 10, and as number 9 says, make sure to pack those everyday necessities. Number 8. Number 8 on our list is to make sure not to procrastinate in getting the week off from work or whatever else it is that you do. Make sure to set the week aside. So often I'll hear people say, you know, I really meant to have the whole week off, and then Gen Con came around and I forgot to get the week off and I was only able to go for one day. And that's terrible. I mean, if you really did plan on only going one day, it's not terrible, but if you wanted to go for the whole weekend and you couldn't get the time off because you waited too long and you were only able to go one day or weren't able to go at all, and that is pretty awful. So make sure to plan early. Start now. It's January. It's the beginning of the year. Put in now to make sure you're off in August to be able to go to Gen Con if you're planning to go, because you do want to plan ahead. In addition, I do want to point out that while Gen Con goes from Thursday to Sunday, it's also very useful to have Wednesday before Gen Con and Monday off as well. And let me explain why. Wednesday's become an unofficial 5th day. On Wednesday, you always have the Sun King Brewery does the beer tapping, so if you who are watching are old enough to drink, The beer tapping is great. They always have great beers on hand. There's also lots of gaming events going on at local pubs and restaurants like the Ram. They always have lots of organized and just open play. People come in, get something to eat, and play games. And there's another free event, a big free event every Wednesday called The Stink, which is a lot of fun. It's like a mixer. You show up. It's like a party. You play games. There's party games there to play, raffles and things like that. So Wednesday is also a cool day to come in a little early, do one or two things, get your program, make sure you have all your tickets and everything in order. If you need to wait online to get stuff, it's better to do it the day before than the day of and miss the opportunity for events if you have to wait in lines, which I don't recommend, but we'll get to that in a minute. And the reason for Monday is simple. You're going to be exhausted. Generally speaking, the mentality of most people is to try to, from dawn to well beyond dark, do as much as possible because it's only this 1 week of the year and everybody wants to get as many events in as possible and do as much as they can. By the time you hit Sunday, you're probably going to be hitting a wall and you're going to be really tired. You don't want to go right back to work on Monday. It's usually good to have an extra day off just to recover and relax. So there's my advice for number 8, which is to make sure you have the whole week off, including Wednesday to Monday. Number 7. My number 7 on our list here is to buy supplies. Now, this includes important things that you're going to need for the convention as well as emergency supplies that you might need just for yourself. So, number 1, a very important supply you will need for Gen Con is a bag of some kind. I usually find messenger bags are the best because they hang at your side out of the way and you don't bump into other people with them like you do with a backpack. If you don't already have a nice size bag to go buy one. Go get a bag. You're going to want a bag because people are going to give you free goodies and giveaways, and you're going to want some place to stuff things. You're going to buy games. If you're buying smaller games that don't need a huge bag of their own, if you have a bag, you can put smaller games right in the bag. Very useful. It's also a good place to carry your gaming supplies. Also make sure that you have pens and pencils. You're going to want things to write on, to make notes about events you're doing, events you're going to be doing. If you're doing role-playing games, you're going to want to make notes about clues and stuff when you're playing the games. It's also good to make sure you have all the dice and rulers and other things you need for any specialist games you might be doing, whether you're doing role-playing games or tabletop miniature games or things like that where you might need a tape measure or something. And a bag is a great place to put all of that. In addition, you should probably pick up some allergy medicines, some cold medicines. You never know if you might get a little bug while you're there and you still don't want to miss out on things. If it's not too bad, you can pop some medicine and keep going. Also bring some water and snacks because sometimes you might be in the middle of a long event and you don't have time to go out and get a full meal. You know, a Cliff Bar and a bottle of water can go a long way in that regard. And also, you know, just little things like travel tissues and toiletries. Make sure you've purchased travel tissues and toiletries because while you're on the trip, you're going to want to brush your teeth and you're going to want to have, in some people's cases, it's very important for them to have the right brands of things like hand cleansers and shampoos and such. They don't like to just make do with what's available around them. If they like to have their own personal brands. So if that applies to you, make sure to get those. And travel tissues, I can't stress enough how great that is. You know how terrible it is to be in the middle of a game and maybe your allergies are bothering you, you need to go blow your nose, and you have to run off and interrupt the whole game to go find a bathroom to get some toilet paper to blow your nose. Travel tissue in your pocket or in your bag is a wonderful thing to have. So that's my number 7, buy supplies. Number 6. So the number 6 on our list here is special clothing options. Now, this kind of encompasses a few different things. So the first thing I want to mention is the simplicity of making sure you have comfortable clothes to wear. If you're going to be doing a lot of events and going to be at the convention for very long hours, you're going to have comfortable clothes, and this carries over very importantly to comfortable shoes. So often people buy brand new shoes right before they go on a trip, but at Gen Con you're going to be walking miles and miles and miles because you're constantly going to be ping-ponging from one side of the convention center to another to go to different events, plus walking around the dealer hall and looking at all the awesome stuff. You never notice it while you're doing it, how much you're walking, because you're entranced by the amazingness that is Gen Con, and it is amazing. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a very comfortable pair of shoes, you might suddenly go, ooh, my feet kind of hurt. So about a month out from Gen Con, if you don't have a nice pair of shoes that's comfortable and in good shape, buy a new pair of shoes to have them nice and broken in by the time you go to Gen Con. So they'll still be in good shape, they'll still be, not going to fall apart on you, but they'll be nice and broken in and also comfortable and good for all that walking. Now, Lynn and I do not ever do the cosplay, but a lot of people do like to do cosplay at conventions, and they have a big costume parade at Gen Con. So it looks like a lot of fun. If you do cosplay, if you're planning on doing cosplay, start early. Another thing I've heard from people often is, oh man, I was going to make a costume this year, it was going to be awesome, I was going to be Gatsu from Berserk, or I was going to be Indiana Jones, but you know what? I procrastinated and it got to be July and I hadn't even started and I realized there was no way I was going to be done by Gen Con. So if you're going to do cosplay, start early, and also, and this is very important, if you're going to do cosplay, bring an emergency sewing kit with you. You never know when something might rip or go wrong with your costume and you need to repair it in a hurry. So that is my number 6, which is specialty clothing options. Number 5. Now, from here on out, these are the really important ones, the top 5, if you will. Now, number 5 is to get cash out of the bank and make a budget. And this is a really big one, if you ask me. It's only not higher on the list because the ones above it are even bigger. But number 5 is a really important one. So first off, most places do take credit card. And if you need to, and if you insist on it, most places will take credit card. But what happens when the credit card services go down and you want to buy something and they're like, sorry, we can only take cash right now? Because you know what? Sometimes the credit card services go down. They're usually relying on those credit card services with the in the cell phones and stuff, a lot of them, so, especially the smaller companies. And if the app goes down, the servers go down, cash is always acceptable. So I always make sure to take an amount of cash out from the bank before I go to Gen Con that is equal to my total budget that we're willing to spend on everything. And when I say everything, I mean food, I mean games, I mean parking, I mean everything. So then what Lynn will do is Lynn always takes that money and she separates it out as best she can into what she expects us to spend on parking, what she expects us to spend on food, and what she expects us to spend on games. And then usually she'll put a little extra in the parking and the food in case we go over, if the normal places we park in or are not available, or if we spend more on food than we normally do, but we usually don't. And by the end of the convention, we take the extra money that was in the food and the parking and we just dump that in the game reserve, and on Sunday we go and spend a little more freely, knowing that we can go up to our limit. But having the limit and having it budgeted out in separate envelopes like that also helps to make sure you don't go over your budget, because you know what your budget is. You know how much you are able to spend. And you know what? When you're swiping credit cards up, down, left, right, and sideways, very quickly you can lose track of how much money you've spent. Whereas if you have cash, every time you pull out that cash envelope and you take a look inside, you say, oh, I've still got plenty left. Or, ooh, I'm getting low. And that's really important. I mean, it's sort of like the rule of when you're in Vegas, not to keep going back to the ATM, because that's how you go broke and can't pay your rent. So this is the same rule sort of applies when you go to Gen Con. Have a budget, get cash, stick to it. And that is my number 5. Number 4. So the number 4 on our list here is to make arrangements for your house, pets, and babies. Now, if your kids are old enough to bring to Gen Con, and that's up to you on how old your kids need to be for you to bring them to Gen Con, great, bring them with. If your kids are old enough to be hanging out all day and playing games and enjoy themselves, they do have the Family Fun Pavilion, and that's awesome. But you can't usually bring your pets to Gen Con unless they're a service animal, in which case they're not really a pet. They're kind of somewhere between a pet and an employee. But that's a conversation for another time. And you can't, just watch your house from afar unless you've got cameras all over the place, which is also kind of weird if you have cameras all over the place in your house. So generally speaking, it's usually good to have some sort of plan for people to house sit for you, pet sit for you, babysit for you, especially if your children are too young. In case of emergency, they do have a daycare set up at Gen Con, but that's kind of expensive. I think it's called Sitters to the Rescue, and it is a bit pricey if you can't find someone else to do it. If you wait till the last minute and have to bring your young one who's really too young for Gen Con, that can really take a lot of money away from your budget that you would have spent on other things. On the other hand, if you manage to have a family member take your baby or watch your pet while you're at Gen Con ahead of time, then that would be a load off your mind, all your worries taken care of, your loved ones in good hands. Just, if you do have a family member, house sit, pet sit, babysit for you, try to buy them something nice while you're at Gen Con and bring it back. Just a little bit of an extra, tip from me. Keep some money aside and buy them a present because they earned it. Number 3. The number 3 on our list here is your event ticket wish list. Now, Gen Con is very well organized. They have you buy event tickets even when they're free. Even when it's $0 for an event ticket, you buy it for $0 ahead of time so that you know whether you're getting into a game or not. All you have to do is show up on time, 1 minute early, and just be there for any event, and you're good, which means it eliminates waiting online for things. This is a very, very good way to do things. I have been to conventions where they do it the other way, where you wait in line for everything, and that's not fun, spending your whole weekend waiting online. So buying the event tickets is good, but make sure you plan and do it ahead of time. So here's the thing. You have to make a wish list. You get an account on the Gen Con website and you make a wish list. And when you're making this wish list, it's my opinion that you need to plan. Plan it out. Pick times when you want to do things and leave yourself free time for things you're going to want free time to do. Don't block up your schedule too much. You're going to want free time for the following things. You're going to want free time to just openly demo games in the exhibit hall. You're going to want free time to shop. You're going to want free time to eat during your normal eat times, or fairly close to it, within an hour or two of your normal eat times. And you're going to want free time to sleep and take a shower every day. These are very important time periods that you need to budget time into. It sounds funny, but Gen Con is 24 hours a day, and I know people who go so crazy that they literally don't leave themselves time to sleep and eat and shower, and they make themselves physically ill by the end of the convention. Don't do that. Leave yourself time to sleep, even if it's at odd times. Give yourself time to sleep. Make sure you take a shower every day so you're not repelling the people you're trying to play games with by the end of the convention. And make sure you have time to eat so that you have your full mental faculties for the games you're going to play. And set up a wish list where you have, in the times that you don't need time to shop, eat, sleep, etc., make sure you have a first choice for that time period, a second choice for that time period, and maybe even a third choice. And you can set the wish list up that way in order of priority and do it that way, because then when the tickets go on sale, which is going to happen a little time in the future, you can just hit the buy button and it'll give you the tickets into your cart in the order of your priority that you wanted for when you go to Gen Con. And that is my number 3. Number 2. Now, the number 2 is very pertinent to today because the badges go on sale tomorrow, and my number 2 is to buy your badges early. And this is for 2 important reasons. The first reason is that pre-registration badge prices are significantly cheaper, $20 or more cheaper, in fact, depending on what kind of badge you're getting, than the post-registration badge prices. Sometime this summer, the prices get put up, and the reason for that is because they want to encourage you to plan early and buy your badges early so they can get estimates, better estimates of how many people are going to be attending the event. So to save you money that you can then use for other things, buy your badges early. And while I'm on the subject of cheapness, it's also significantly cheaper to buy a full weekend pass than it is for each single day's ticket. So if you're planning on going for a couple days, you might as well get the whole weekend pass and do the whole weekend if you can. And because a one-day ticket on either Friday or Saturday is actually almost as expensive as a full weekend pass. You save a lot going the whole time. The other reason to buy your tickets early is to have them shipped to you. Now, I know shipping is not available in all areas, but if it is available in your area, do it. It saves you a whole lot of time. I have never had a problem with the shipping. I've done it every year. The badge comes to me in the mail, especially if you do it plenty early enough, it comes to you in the mail, and then you don't have to wait on the will call line. Now, the will call line at certain times during the day, even on Wednesday, can be incredibly long. I mean, you get there and you see it and you say, what is this monstrous line? And it's like, oh, it's the will call line. But I've already got my badge and my tickets because I had them shipped to me. And those are the reasons you want to buy your badge and your tickets, for that matter, your event tickets, early and have them shipped to you. And that is my number 2. Number 1. So, for number 1, and this is the most important thing on the list, and there was a little bit of debate between Lynn and I on this. I actually originally wanted to put something else as number 1, but Lynn convinced me that this was the most important thing on the list. And it is. Number 1 is to square away your travel arrangements and your hotel arrangements early, because you can't go if you can't get there and you can't have a place to stay. It is the most important thing. Now, if you have to travel by plane or bus or train or something like that, travel for those days can fill up pretty early because a lot of people are coming in from all around the world to come to Gen Con. So get those tickets bought early. If you're instead traveling by driving, make sure your car is in good order. Make sure it's in good shape. Possibly bring it in for an extra checkup at the shop just to make sure it's not going to break down on you on a day you need to go to the convention. Make sure you've got a spare tire in your trunk. Make sure your car is completely ready for the back and forth of driving between the venue and your hotel. And for hotels in Indianapolis fill up fast for Gen Con. Now, you can get them cheaper through the housing portal if you're able to get one through there. But if you're not, immediately after the housing portal, which, by the way, if you don't know what that is an area on the Gen Con website where they have a certain number of rooms on downtown hotels for cheaper than they would normally be. Now, if you're not one of the lucky people that gets one of those rooms, you're either going to have to pay a large amount of money for a downtown hotel, or you're going to have to stay a little further away. You can go on one of the deal websites and usually get a room, like when I say deal websites, I mean like Priceline or Travelocity, etc. And you can usually get a deal on a hotel that's about 15 minutes away from downtown Indy. 15 minutes is not that bad, and as long as your car is in good shape, you just jump in the car and you drive into downtown. If you did not drive out to Indy, you're probably going to want to rent a car because there's not really good public transit options to get from the hotels to downtown. So if you're going to stay 15 minutes away, that's the other thing. You're going to need to make sure you have transport to go back and forth, and you're probably going to want to arrive fairly early to make sure you get parking in some of the garages down there. So there you have it. That is my 10 through 1 advice, my top 10 list of advice for you for preparing to attend Gen Con 2017. That is Gen Con 50. So, did you have any comments or questions either about Gen Con or this video? Feel free to comment down below. Do you have other bits of advice you would like to give to people? Put them in the comments down below. And if you have any disagreements with the things that I commented on, or any addendums, or anything you just want to comment on, any of the things on my top 10 list of the best bits of advice to give to people for preparing for Gen Con, feel free to comment down below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video and you would like to see more like it, please, please, please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, and hopefully until I see you at Gen Con 50, game on.